I'm standing in what remains of an old pottery workshop in Crete. The wheel is still here, rusted and silent. Clay dust coats the windowsills like ash from a forgotten fire. There's something about abandoned places that forces us to confront a peculiar human delusion, the belief that the past is solid, unchangeable, preserved somewhere like artifacts behind museum glass. But I want to propose something that might unsettle you. Your past is not a museum. It never was. It's clay in your hands, and you're reshaping it right now, even as I speak these words. My name is Adrian Vale. I'm 58 years old, and I've spent 3 decades studying how human beings construct meaning from the raw material of experience. And the most radical thing I've learned is this: memory is not a recording device, it's a storytelling engine. And every story changes with each telling. Today we're going to dismantle one of the most persistent illusions of human consciousness, the illusion of the fixed past. We're going to explore why your memories are not photographs in an album, but sculptures you remake every time you touch them. And we're going to ask a dangerous question. If the past is always being rewritten, who are you really? Let's begin. Think about your childhood for a moment. Perhaps there's a memory that feels particularly vivid. A birthday party, a family vacation, your first day of school. You can see it, can't you? The colors, the faces, maybe even the weather that day. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. That memory you're experiencing right now, it's not the original. It's not even a copy of the original. It's a reconstruction, built from fragments, influenced by every time you've remembered it before, by photographs you've seen, by stories others have told you, by the person you've become since then. Neuroscience has confirmed what philosophers have long suspected. The act of remembering is the act of creating. When you recall a memory, your brain doesn't retrieve a file from storage. It reassembles pieces of information scattered across different neural networks, and in that reassembly, it introduces changes. Every remembering is a rewriting. The psychologist Elizabeth Loftus spent decades demonstrating how easily memories can be altered, implanted, or entirely fabricated. In her experiments, she convinced people they'd been lost in a shopping mall as children, an event that never happened. She showed that eyewitness testimony, which seems so certain, so clear, is often catastrophically unreliable. But this isn't just about false memories or the fallibility of human recall. This is about something more profound, the fundamental nature of the past itself. We speak of the past as though it's a place, somewhere we've been, somewhere that still exists in some form. We say back then, as if then is a location we could theoretically return to. But the past doesn't exist anywhere. It's not stored in some cosmic archive. The only place the past exists is in the present moment, in the neural patterns of brains, in the ink of documents, in the arrangement of atoms that bear traces of previous arrangements. The past is not a museum you visit, it's a story you tell. And like all stories, it changes depending on who's telling it, who's listening, and why it's being told at all. I've asked the owner of this property if I could use this old pottery wheel. Watch what happens when I place clay on it. The clay doesn't have a fixed form, it has potential. It responds to pressure, to the speed of the wheel, to the moisture in my hands. The same lump of clay can become a bowl, a vase, a plate, or it can collapse entirely and return to formlessness. This is what memory is, not a museum, but a workshop, not preservation, but creation. Every time you remember something, you're not reaching into a filing cabinet. You're sitting down at the wheel. You're taking the raw material of past experience and shaping it according to present needs, present understanding, present identity. Let me give you an example from my own life. When I was 23, I had a devastating argument with my father. For years, I remembered that argument as evidence of his rigidity, his inability to understand me, his failure as a parent. The memory was sharp, painful, and I returned to it often, each time confirming my narrative of victimhood and his villainy. But when I was 41, my father died, and something strange happened to that memory. In my grief, I found myself returning to that same argument, but this time I noticed things I'd never noticed before. The fear in his eyes, the way his hands trembled, the fact that he was only 38 years old at the time, younger than I was when he died, struggling with his own demons that I knew nothing about. The facts of the argument hadn't changed, but the memory had transformed completely. I had reshaped it, not deliberately, not consciously, but inevitably. Because I was a different person touching that memory, and different hands create different forms. This is what I mean when I say the past is clay in your hands. You are not a passive observer of your history. You are its active author, rewriting it constantly, whether you realize it or not. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche understood this. He wrote about the will to power, not just as a drive to dominate others, but as the fundamental creative force of existence, the drive to interpret, to give meaning, to shape chaos into form. And nowhere is this more evident than in how we construct our personal histories. Your past is not something that happened to you. It's something you're doing right now, in this present moment. You're selecting which events to remember and which to forget. You're deciding which details matter and which don't. You're constructing a narrative that makes sense of who you are today. And here's the truly radical implication. If you're already reshaping your past unconsciously, what happens when you do it consciously? What happens when you recognize your role as the sculptor of your own history? There's a danger in believing the past is fixed. It's the danger of becoming imprisoned by your own story. I've met so many people who carry their past like chains. I'm this way because of what happened to me. I can't change because of where I come from. My childhood made me who I am, and there's nothing I can do about it. These statements feel true. They feel like honest acknowledgements of cause and effect. But they're actually a form of surrender. A decision to let one version of the past, one interpretation of events, determine the present and future forever. The psychologist Dan McAdams has studied what he calls narrative identity, the story we tell about ourselves that gives our life coherence and meaning. He's found that people who see themselves as victims of their past, trapped by unchangeable circumstances, tend to experience more depression, less agency, and fewer positive life outcomes. But people who see their past as a series of challenges they've overcome, or lessons they've learned, or even random events they've made meaning from, these people tend to be more resilient, more adaptable, more capable of growth. The difference isn't in what actually happened to them. The difference is in how they've shaped the clay of those experiences. This is not about denying trauma. This is not about toxic positivity or pretending that terrible things don't have real consequences. I'm not suggesting that you can simply think positive and erase genuine pain. What I'm suggesting is more subtle and more powerful, that even trauma, even the worst experiences of your life, are not fixed in their meaning. The event happened, that's true, but what it means, how it fits into your larger story, what you make of it, that's still being decided, that's still being shaped. Viktor Frankl, who survived the Nazi concentration camps, wrote that the last of human freedoms is the ability to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. He watched fellow prisoners face the same horrors he faced, and he noticed that some found meaning even in that hell, while others were destroyed by it. The circumstances were the same. The clay was the same, but what they made of it, that was different. You have more power over your past than you think. Not power to change what happened, but power to change what it means. And meaning is everything. So how do we do this? How do we consciously reshape the clay of our past? First, we must recognize that we're already doing it. There is no true version of your past that you're distorting. There are only versions, interpretations, narratives. Some are more useful than others, some serve your growth and some imprison you. But none of them are the objective truth, because objective truth about subjective experience is a category error. Second, we must practice what I call narrative flexibility, the ability to hold multiple versions of the same event without insisting that only one is real. Let me give you an exercise. Think of a painful memory, something you've defined as a failure or a wound. Now, I want you to tell that story from 3 different perspectives. Tell it as a tragedy. You as the victim, circumstances as cruel, the outcome as devastating. Now tell it as a comedy. Not that it was funny, but in the classical sense of comedy as a story where the protagonist encounters obstacles and emerges transformed. What did you learn? How did it redirect your path? Finally, tell it as a myth, a symbolic story about a hero facing trials. What archetypal pattern does it follow? What universal human experience does it represent? None of these versions is more true than the others, but I guarantee that each version will make you feel differently, will suggest different possibilities, will open different futures. This is the power of conscious narrative reshaping. You're not lying to yourself. You're recognizing that the story was always a construction, and you have a choice about how to construct it. Third, we must understand that reshaping the past is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing practice. The clay never hardens completely. You will return to the same memories again and again throughout your life, and each time you'll have the opportunity to shape them anew. When I was 30, my childhood looked one way. At 40, it looked different. At 58, it looks different still. Not because the events changed, but because I changed. And as I changed, what I needed from those memories changed. What I could see in them changed. This is not instability. This is growth. This is the natural evolution of consciousness encountering its own history with increasing wisdom, compassion, and complexity. The Japanese art of kintsugi involves repairing broken pottery with gold, making the breaks part of the object's beauty rather than something to hide. This is what we can do with our past. Not deny the breaks, not pretend the damage didn't happen, but incorporate it into a larger pattern that's more beautiful because of what it's been through, not despite it. Your past is not a museum of broken things. It's a workshop where broken things become art. Now, some of you might be feeling uncomfortable. If we can reshape the past, if memory is this malleable, doesn't that open the door to self-deception, to denying responsibility, to rewriting history in ways that serve us but betray the truth? These are important concerns, and yes, there are ethical boundaries to this practice. The difference between conscious narrative reshaping and self-deceptive denial is this. One increases your freedom and responsibility, the other decreases it. When you reshape a memory to see yourself as having more agency, more choice, more capacity to respond, that's empowering and ethical. When you reshape it to deny harm you caused, to avoid accountability, to paint yourself as blameless, that's evasion. The goal is not to create a past that makes you feel good. The goal is to create a past that makes you more fully human, more capable of growth, more aware of complexity, more able to hold paradox. You can acknowledge that your parents did their best and also caused you harm. You can recognize that you were a victim of circumstances and also made choices that shaped outcomes. You can honor the pain of the past and also refuse to be defined by it. This is not contradiction, this is the fullness of truth, which is always more complex than any single narrative can capture. And here's something crucial. Reshaping your past is not just about you. It's about everyone whose life touches yours. When you change your story, you change how you show up in the world. You change what you're capable of offering others. You change the future you're creating. If you're trapped in a story of victimhood, you'll unconsciously create situations that confirm that story. If you're trapped in a story of unworthiness, you'll sabotage opportunities that contradict it. But if you reshape those stories into narratives of resilience, learning, and becoming, you'll move through the world differently. You'll be different. The past is not just personal, it's relational, it's collective. And when you take responsibility for shaping your past consciously, you're taking responsibility for the future you're creating for yourself and others. I've shaped this clay into a simple bowl. It's not perfect. There are fingerprints in it, asymmetries, marks of the making. But it holds water now. It has function. It has form. Tomorrow I could crush it back into a lump and make something entirely different. Or I could fire it in a kiln and it would become permanent, unchangeable. But even then, even fired and hardened, it would still be a choice I made about what to create from formless potential. Your past is like this. You can keep it formless, constantly reshaping it, never committing to a story. Or you can fire certain narratives into place, letting them become the foundation you build upon. Both have their place, both have their wisdom. But what you cannot do, what you must not do, is pretend that the past shaped itself, that it exists independent of your participation, that you are merely its curator rather than its creator. You are not the guardian of a museum. You are the artist in the workshop, and the clay is in your hands right now. What will you make of it? What story about your past serves the future you want to create? What meaning can you shape from the raw material of experience that will set you free rather than imprison you? These are not rhetorical questions. They are the questions that define a conscious life. Your past is not fixed. It never was. It's clay in your hands. So shape it wisely, shape it with compassion, shape it with courage, and then live from that new story and watch how the future transforms.